Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, it's great. We've somehow turned a podcast that has weekly in its name into a daily podcast. And then somehow we're now turning it into a more than daily podcast. I'm not sure how this has happened. It's all happening very quickly, but we keep getting people who want us to answer questions about a game that they're obviously very excited about. So here we are.
It is Oregon week, so I don't know that we can do enough. It's a very important game, as evidenced by the ticket prices, which are this is the biggest game on the schedule, at least the home schedule, if you will. So certainly plenty of things to talk about. And yeah, so we're going to do a couple of listener question shows mixed in this week, starting with this one right now. And there is plenty to talk about. So Tom, rather than us coming up with the topics like idiots, we're going to let the listeners bring them to us because, what better way to know what people want to talk about than have them talk to us about it?
Yeah, exactly. We're not here to talk to ourselves. I'm tired of talking to you, frankly. So we're here. We're just here for the listeners. We're here to answer the questions you have. Today's show is pretty much all injury related, like Ohio State injury questions, Oregon injury questions, impact questions from falling off from those injuries. So let's get started with one from @ReedTeatsworth. Is the current 13 to 14 point spread under the assumption that Kayvon Thibodeaux is suiting up Saturday or not? Buckeyes are favored by about 2 touchdowns, give or take. And that number hasn't really moved. That's kind of been the number since the summer. So, I mean, I think that they're everyone is probably assuming he's going to play, but not sure how limited he's going to be at this point. But, until that number moves one direction or the other off of 14, I don't think that that's necessarily baked into the answer. What do you think?
Yeah, and even if it goes to 12 or something, I don't think that's necessarily indicative of Kayvon Thibodeaux. I think this number is the way it is because everybody has expected him to play. That this is what it was 2 weeks ago when he was perfectly healthy. This is what it was a week ago when he was perfectly healthy. If it starts to creep to 15, 16, 17, then take that as a sign that Vegas knows something about Kayvon Thibodeaux's ankle. I do expect him to play. I think this is a game that you try as hard as you can not to miss. It was interesting that Mario Cristobal said, well, if he doesn't practice, it wouldn't be safe for him to play. It wouldn't be good for the team, wouldn't be good for this or that. I don't know how much I believe that. It may not be good for Thibodeaux, but also good luck trying to keep him off of the field. I do recall back when we talked about earlier in the week, Chase Young playing on 2 bad ankles, he was less effective. And so how effective can Thibodeaux be? Because he's not going to be 100%, but at 90%, he's still better than 95% or 99% of the defensive ends out there. But the question is, at 90% or whatever, is he better than Nicholas Petit-Frere? Is he better than Dwan Jones? Where does he match up with them? How much of an advantage does he have? How much easier is he to handle if he can't do everything and he can't bend and he can't turn the corner and he can't do this or that and get that first step? That's going to be interesting to watch. Gives Dwan Jones and Nicholas Petit-Frere a little bit of a hand, and just watching him, even in that first quarter against Fresno State, they're going to need all the help they can get.
Yeah, that was a very, very impressive performance early in that game. It was, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes in the game, it felt like, and he came blasting off the edge, strip sack. I mean, it was immediate, and I just immediately quote tweeted it with get ready to hear a bunch about this guy this week. And then 5 minutes later, he got hurt, and it was oh no, come on! This is we've heard both from Oregon and Ohio State. This is the kind of game that you come to this school to play. You want to be a part of this game, and when you want to be a part of the game, you want to have both teams at full strength. You want the game to decide something, not to at the end be well, yes, Ohio State won, but it was only because Kayvon Thibodeaux didn't play, or it's only because Josh Proctor didn't play, or it's only because whatever. So you want both teams at full strength because you want to. I mean, this is kind of the whole point of this sport is let's see who's best at football and not have a bunch of asterisks put on that. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how much he can play. I think that he's going to play at least some, and the question is, does he play 5 snaps and then decide he can't go, or does he play a limited number of snaps? Does he play 15 or 20 snaps situationally just to make him the best use of him without overtaxing him? Or is he able to go for most of the game? And I don't know that they know the answer out in Oregon, and that means we definitely don't know the answer here. But that is going to be definitely one of the major storylines leading up to the game. But no, it is not. It is go back to the question. No, it is not baked into the point spread yet.
I am interested to watch Zach Harrison's response to all of the attention that Kayvon Thibodeaux is receiving, because pretty sure they're in the same class, both defensive ends, both 5-star guys. Thibodeaux already the talk of the world, number one overall draft pick. This is an opportunity for Zach Harrison to remind America, like, oh, I also exist. And, Buckeye fans saw him with the strip sack last week. Thibodeaux did the same against Fresno State. But this is one of those opportunities for a guy who is a little under the radar right now to remind people and to show up and say, hey, don't forget about me. I know all talk is about this guy, but I'm pretty good as well.
And he is pretty good as well. And that'll be definitely an interesting story to watch as well, because Oregon's offensive line has everyone back from last year. This is another, just like last week, Minnesota's whole offensive line was back from last year. Same thing with Oregon this year. So this is going to be another challenge for the Buckeye defensive line. Next one from @fun_magnets. And this might be the most interesting question we've gotten all week. Which player would be the most impactful injury if they can't go? Josh Proctor or Kayvon Thibodeaux?
That's a good one. Because when we first saw that one, I think we both said we could probably spend 30 minutes on this one alone.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I think just based on what Ohio State needs to do with their defense, I would initially side with Proctor as the free safety. But after seeing a good portion of that Fresno State game, Oregon against Fresno State, if they don't have Kayvon Thibodeaux, this one might get out of hand for Ohio State. They need him in there impacting the game. Ohio State without Josh Proctor, we've seen Bryson Shaw grade out a champion in the last two scrimmages. We didn't see that, but he did. And then, of course, in the game as well. So there's something there. There's a there for the Buckeyes. But with Thibodeaux, there's nobody else like him. Maybe nobody else like him in the country. And he creates such a problem that if he's not there, that's going to increase CJ Stroud's time to throw. It's going to increase and open up the offense that Ryan Day can call, because they don't have to worry about him. They don't have to gear things away from him. It just opens up everything. And so if he is not in the game, that is a much more impactful injury to me than Josh Proctor. And I think maybe it's partly because of the backups, but also the chasm between a level of talent between the starter and the backup, but also what Thibodeaux overall means for the Oregon defense.
And, there's some other considerations when you're thinking about this from Proctor's side. One of them is if you get Sevyn Banks and or Cam Brown this weekend, maybe that sort of mitigates the loss of Proctor, if there is a loss of Proctor. And again, we don't know the answer yet officially on that. Just like Thibodeaux, we're kind of waiting. We've heard that Thibodeaux is day to day. That's what Mario Cristobal told us on Monday. We have not heard any kind of answer on Josh Proctor. We will not get any kind of official word on Josh Proctor until about 9 a.m. on Saturday when they release that availability report. So we'll see how that's all going at that point. But if you get Sevyn Banks back and you have Bryson Shaw there, then maybe that's not quite as much of a concern. And, the other question is, how explosive is Oregon's offense? I mean, they have, do they have the deep threats that can really take the top off this Ohio State defense? Because that's where you're going to need, that's where you're going to need Proctor. So that's a concern. And then the other piece is, how often is Proctor involved in a play? He's kind of the guy who keeps the 20-yard play from turning into an 80-yard play. And those are extremely important. And we've talked all about, a whole bunch about how important that is for the Buckeyes this year. But he's not necessarily involved in every passing play. There's plenty of other people who can bring the guy down before they get to Josh Proctor's level of the defense. Thibodeaux, every time there's a pass play and he's either not on the field or not 100% and is, somewhat physically compromised, as you said, that gives CJ Stroud more time. That gives, the receivers more time to get open. That puts a lot more pressure on the back end of that Oregon defense. It potentially, every time they run the ball, if he's not on there, maybe it's, the hole's a little bigger, or it's a little easier to get to the corner, or it's a little easier to outrun whoever is replacing Thibodeaux on that spot. So I do think the Thibodeaux injury is more impactful for, any of those reasons. It's not as obvious an answer as it might seem just sort of off the bat. because Proctor would be a significant injury, especially if they don't have Banks and or Brown back this week. I mean, that's a concern, but I don't know if Anthony Brown is the quarterback who's really going to be able to take advantage of that. And, maybe you see some bigger plays in the run game or something where you're thinking, hey boy, wouldn't it be great if Josh Proctor was back there to keep this from turning into a big play? But I think overall you have to side with Thibodeaux being a bigger loss.
Yeah, you mentioned the run game. That's what I wanted to touch on last, because Anthony Brown did carry the ball 16 times in that game. So he's going to be part of the running game. And we saw him break a 30-yarder to basically win the game at the end. So it's going to be important for whoever that deep safety is to make some tackles. And if it's Bryson Shaw and he's missing those tackles, then now you've seen the impact of the loss of Josh Proctor, maybe even more than in the passing game. So that will be key. Just the open field tackling that Jordan Fuller was so good at. If the Buckeyes can get that, I think that would be significant and necessary in this game.
Next one from @VanGo_0. Any clue of the injuries or length of time they'll be missing for? So Cam Brown, Seven Banks, Harry Miller, Josh Proctor. We already talked about Proctor as kind of a question mark. Banks was supposedly able to play in an emergency last week. His dad told someone that he was about 90%. So you would assume he's close to 100%. You would certainly assume, barring a setback that we have not heard about yet, that he's good to go this weekend and should be close to 100% at that point. Cam Brown is sort of a question mark. He was listed as he was on the availability report as unavailable last week. So he was not he was never going to play last week. We'll see. I have not heard anything definitive on him one way or the other for this weekend. Josh Proctor, we just talked about. Harry Miller, I think I might think Harry Miller is the second most likely to return behind Seven Banks. What do you think?
I'm not expecting Harry Miller back yet, and really I don't have any good reason for that other than Luke Whip. I think we're talking to Luke Whippler this week, and we're talking to Bryson Shaw as well, and just maybe reading into some things there. Cam Brown, it's strange. Just the way Kerry Combs was asked, hey, are you getting closer to having everybody? Yeah, we're getting closer. It's getting there. It's getting there, but not really going into depth on any of those guys. If Josh Proctor can't play this week, I would assume this is a multi-week thing. And I'm not going to say how long or whatever, but if you miss 1 week because of a shoulder injury, it seems like your collarbone or whatever, it seems like you'd miss more than one. So I in order of who's most likely to play, I think Seven Banks is the most likely to play for me. Just not knowing, and really strange, and there's just so little information coming out about Josh Proctor at this point. Don't even know if that means that he's fine or it's not fine. Cam Brown, obviously he's getting closer, but that was such a, he had some dings in camp as well, so you just don't know what to think with him. So I would, I don't know. Are we expecting only one of those guys to play? If I set the over under on 1.5, Tom, where are you going?
Well, as you were talking there, I'm going to ask him, if I set the over under at 1.5 there, where are you going?
I'm going 1.
Yeah, I'll be the optimist and go over and say 2 will play. It's just, I think one is almost guaranteed unless there's some kind of a significant setback. And then after that, it's well, what do you want to believe? Because you're right on Proctor. I got a photo of the moment of the impact there, and it's well, that's either a stinger and he'll be back next week, or it's a broken collarbone and he's out for a big chunk of the season. So if he's not back this week, that's probably very bad news moving forward for the next 2 months of Ohio State football at least. So that's a question. And Harry Miller, his status is just kind of up in the air right now, and again, we're sort of reading some tea leaves right now in terms of media availability. It's well, they're making Luke Whippler available. Is that because Luke Whippler is going to start again this week, or is that because Luke Whippler wants to talk about starting last week? And we don't know yet. And so we'll, maybe we'll get more of an indication on Wednesday night when we get to talk to those guys. But they were pretty buttoned up on not leaking any information when we talk to them on Tuesday. So I'm not overly optimistic that we will have a hard and fast answer on this question until, sometime a lot closer to Saturday morning.
It's like trying to decipher the depth chart by who's jogging in what order at practice. And you're just doing what you can, you're using what tools you have, and it may be completely incorrect or completely correct. And who knows, like one of these guys may wake up Friday and be like, hey, I feel as good as I felt all year. And so, okay, well, then you're good to go. And we'll see. Obviously, hopefully more than 1.5, certainly more than 1.5, hopefully no halves out there at all for the Buckeyes.
Next one from at EBS_cafe, who kind of got us started on this because he asked a bunch of interesting questions on Twitter. And it was like, oh, well, guess what? We can probably do a listener question show out of this. So here's the first one, and we'll answer more of his the next time we do one of these shows. What effect did the loss of Harry Miller have in game one? We've seen a lot of botched snaps across college football in week one. There
have been, even like every single day, there were some bad snaps. I don't know what that was about. And I think it's honestly, Tom, I think it's worse than targeting right now. It's just out of control. So maybe what we should do, suspend, like kick the center out. One bad snap, you're kicked out for the half. And if you have a bad snap in the second half, you're going to miss the first half of the next game.
Hear me out. Roughing the center, no longer a penalty after the first bad snap. I'm just saying.
Can you retroactive that?
I'm just saying, think about it. Yeah, it's it had an impact probably. I think Harry Miller is a little more experienced at this point. He's had another year in the system. I think he sounded very comfortable with the fact that he has the snaps down at this point. The nerves are probably not as great as they would be for Luke Whippler in his first career start, which I think probably is a lot of what that was, just first career start nerves. But Whippler graded out a champion. He wasn't perfect. He was, you go back and watch, and there was stuff that was like, oh yeah, it wasn't just the snaps. There were other things that were kind of like, yeah, that wasn't great. You gotta work on that. But he's a second year player, first time really seeing the field. And he gets thrust sort of last minute into a starting role on the road, season opener with a quarterback who is also a first-time quarterback. And you really didn't notice him. Like, he didn't become the main character of the game on Twitter, which is always a good thing. Mm-hmm. So, I think it's a testament to how well they've done with offensive line recruiting recently, where they've got so many, they have so many guys who are really talented 5-star, kind of high 4-star, high, low 5-star kind of guys on that line, where you can slide a guy in there and you don't necessarily notice. And the other piece of that is you've also got some real talented people on both sides of him. So he maybe has a little more help than he would. I think you as a center would much rather be playing between Thayer Munford and Paris Johnson than the Demetrius Knox, Malcolm Pridgeon tandem from a couple of years ago. I mean, it's just, you're set up better to succeed in the spot that you're in right now. But I mean, we've told the story a few times before about how hard he works, and right after the national championship game, being in the facility and sending stud video of him working out and trying to get feedback on it. Like, this is not just, well, I've got good people around me, so I'm doing well. It's like, well, also he was a really good recruit, and he's put in a ton of work, and he's put himself in a position to succeed, and he really is.
Yeah, the number 2 center in the 2020 class had two bad snaps that bounced along the turf. CJ Stroud did a great job picking them up and keeping them from being any bigger trouble than they were. So it sounds like the line calls were all good, and that's as big of a job as the actual snapping. So I would check the weather a little bit ago. It's going to be sunny, so he doesn't have to worry about the rain again, which is probably also a factor. I think it did have an effect. Obviously, your first start is going to be have its ups and downs. I don't know if there's a single player on that team that was perfect in their first start. Like, they all had moments where it's like, okay, this is it'll get better. Don't worry. There's going to be a lot of film work where the coaches and they'll be watching in their position groups, and they'll show it, and like, this is what you do on your first start. And the guys are like, can fast forward through this part, and in fact, never show this part again. In Spaceballs fashion. But now this is week 2, and he's going to be much more comfortable if he's in there. And if he's not, you have a guy that you now know that you can throw in there and you can rely on because he was thrown in there. And just like last year when Max Ray and Matt Jones and Dwan Jones were thrown in there against Michigan State, the show keeps moving. And Luke Whippler was the first example of that this year. We'll see more likely just because of the nature of playing football in a pandemic now, even with vaccinated players, if they still test positive, they're going to miss a game. And so that whole thing is still out there looming like a boogeyman. I shouldn't even speak it into existence, but it's just one of those things where you have to have a bunch of guys prepared, and clearly they do. They just have to be healthy. But yeah, there were a lot of bad snaps. I think there was some in the Florida State and Notre Dame game, and I think it's time, Tom, maybe the quarterbacks start hitting the jugs gun, but like aimed at their ankles or aimed at their feet. Like practice for grounders in baseball or softball. Like you've got to get in front of those things.
I was a first baseman growing up as the big lefty kid who could hit, but couldn't play anywhere else in the infield. So I spent a lot of time practicing picking bad throws out and scooping bad throws out of the dirt. And so, yeah, that's maybe aim the jugs gun about mid shin and just fire balls off the turf at them until they get better at it. Did
you have a first baseman's glove?
I did eventually, not the whole time, but eventually once I got far enough along, it was like, I should probably get one of those. That's because the throws aren't getting any better. They're coming at me faster. They're not getting any better. they do get there faster, but not they're still in the dirt. So you mentioned earlier your people's first starts. Now, hey, let's not get hung up on this. Let's just fast forward through this. As we're going through you put out a call for questions on Twitter, and I got to the bottom of the list, and there's a thing that said show additional replies, including those that may contain offensive content. And I'm like, well, what could this possibly be? And I clicked on it, and Tony, it was hateful. It was extremely hateful. It was from @JackSTR720-814-07. Tony, who is more incompetent at predicting things, Tom or any weatherman?
Well, to be fair, the weathermen, they don't have any computer information at their fingertips, whereas Tom does, and yet he still got a bunch of stuff wrong. So like Tom, he has all these computer models to try and predict stuff. He's got his Tom Doppler that he uses to do some football information. He has his analytics. He's got his FPE. He's got his SPI. He's got this and that. And what did it do him, Tom? I forget. Can you remind the people how many of your bold predictions came true for this Minnesota game?
Well, we're out of time. Thank you guys all for joining us. Really appreciate it. Yeah, it was a learning experience, the Minnesota week.
Was it the rain?
You gotta remember that it was rain, travel, first game uncertainty. The price of a bushel of corn these days. I mean, there's so many factors that go into these things. And the good news is we're doing another bold prediction show this week. So I will have another chance at glory this week, and you will have a chance to fade my picks. If you can find a sports book that will let you fade my picks, you could make a lot of money. So you're welcome in advance.
I also have a chance to come back to the crowd. I started out, I got 4 right of my 5. So I now lead 4-0. We'll see if you can catch up in 1 week and perhaps take the lead. Who knows? Anything could happen. Even possibly something as crazy as that. I'm looking forward to keeping track on that. One more thing on the injury front, Tom, and you can go back to the bold predictions if you want to.
No, thank you. We're done. You go ahead.
Fort Williams is getting closer. I think Kerry Combs or Ryan Day said he had some setbacks. That's why he didn't play. So he could also factor in somewhere if Josh Proctor doesn't go, although I think he is that bullet. It's just going to be interesting to see what they do if Josh Proctor isn't there and how they move stuff around. Does Ronnie Hickman do more safety stuff? Does that free up Craig Young or Court Williams? Does Lathan Ransom do more deep stuff? And do they want to keep rotating? Or at this point, if there is no Josh Proctor, is it just Bryson Shaw? And we know they're going to start shrinking that rotation everywhere. And if there's only one free safety they're comfortable with, does Bryson Shaw go the entire game? If he struggles, then what do you do? I wonder what's going on in practice right now if there is no Josh Proctor, because I don't think you can practice everybody at their normal positions during the week. And then on Saturday, if something goes wrong, like tell Lathan Ransom, okay, you go play deep right now. Even though, Tom, all camp long, well, we all learn all of the positions.
Yeah. And I mean, Lathan Ransom was a deep safety in high school. So this is not like a completely new thing, but obviously it's a different system and all of that. So yeah, that's going to be real interesting. And, if you see Lathan Ransom at deep safety, I think that's going to tell you everything you need to know about when Josh Proctor is going to be back. And the answer is going to be not real soon. So if it's still Bryson Shaw, I think you can sort of hold out some hope for maybe this is a relatively short minor injury or, a couple weeks. And if it's more than that, if you see them shuffling people around, like, yeah, that might be a bigger issue. So we'll have to see. But yeah, that's another. I mean, there are a million interesting storylines going into this game. That is definitely one of them that we're going to be keeping a close eye on because, it may not necessarily be as impactful as the Kayvon Thibodeaux thing, but it's going to be pretty significant for Ohio State this fall if Josh Proctor is not available.
Yeah, and that's something that, as you said, it'll continue on all season long. Another injury thing, Cody Simon had some dings or whatever that maybe kept him out a little bit. He played well. You assume things are better and he's going to play more. And I'd be a little surprised if he's not starting at this point, just based on the impact that he had in the game against Minnesota. And he's a guy that you can do several different things with, and he has the speed to keep up with what Oregon does. It's going to be interesting just to watch them play a quarterback that will run the ball again and see how they do and how they combat that. This is a spread defense now, the 4-2-5. It's built to stop spread offenses. So let's see what they can do against the spread defense and see how much more Cody Simon is involved. Tom, you have anything else?
No, I think, we have plenty of questions for another listener question show later in the week. So we'll do that. But I think I probably do need to take my medicine, and we'll do our bold prediction show for this week coming up next time you hear from us. So that'll be fun for at least one of us. And then we'll see how it goes after that. And I may resign my position as a bold predictor if I take another golden sombrero.
I want to maybe even add more stakes to this. Have you ever played bid euchre or any kind of bid card game where you kind of have to predict how many tricks you're going to take?
Yes.
And then if whatever you're off by, you lose points or whatever. So how many do you think, and you're not going to get all of them right. How many do you think you're going to get right?
I think I'm going to get at least, I'll tell you what, I'll set an over under and you can pick. Over under 1.5.
Wow. You have no confidence in yourself. Tom, if anything comes of this, I just want you to become a more confident person, because this is really, really depressing when you're like, 1.5. I don't know about football. It's hard.
See, you're saying this now like you're being all supportive. And then when I'm like, bold prediction number 1, the boys get out and get some good fresh air and exercise, you'll be like, that's not bold. And I'll be like, what do you want from me?
I'll be like, I should have taken the over.
I took an over last week. Come on.
Well, I hope you do better this week. Not too much better. I hope I do better as well. I just hope we both do better, and things will take care of themselves. So that will do it for this episode. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for watching. A reminder to check out BuckeyeScoop.com. If you're not yet a member, now's a great time to become one. Also, you can find all kinds of videos on YouTube's podcasts and shows and highlights and interviews like this here on youtube.com/BuckeyeScoop, where we drop everything. If you subscribe, you'll be notified anytime something drops, and you won't have to go searching for it. We just bring it to you, because you shouldn't have to go looking for stuff. Stuff should just be brought to you. This is the 2000s now. Stuff should be given to us, and we shouldn't have to go searching for it. And now you don't if you just subscribe on YouTube. So thank you all for listening. Thank you for watching, and we will talk to you guys later.